Good afternoon, everyone.
Afternoon,
We are
ma'am.
waiting. Yeah, good afternoon. We are waiting for our resource person to join the meeting. So we'll just start within a short span of time. Just wait. And one request to all, please mute your mics. Okay. Hello everyone. Resource person is in meeting. She will join in a minute. Okay, she's there.
Hi.
Yes, ma'am, you're there.
I'm just going to turn on my video.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So, good afternoon, all. I, Assistant Professor Manisha Sagvekar, welcome you all for the second day of the lecture series that is organized by PS Modern Legal Research Center of Progressive Education Societies, Modern Law College, Pune. So, topic for today's session is research methodology, expectation versus reality. So, now I take this opportunity to introduce today's resource person, Assistant Professor Aishwarya Pagidar, Madam. She is presently working at Jindal Global Law School, OP Jindal Global University, Sonipat, Haryana. So, ma'am has completed BSL LLB from Modern Law College under Savitribai Phule Pune University. She has completed her LLM in Human Rights, Health Law and Policy from Northeastern University School of Law, Boston, USA. Ma'am has taught subjects like jurisprudence, academic writing, gender, war and peace, constitution law, public international law, constitutional theory. So these subjects also form her research interest, which has led to her engagement with human rights research projects, sensitization programs, and other related events at Jindal Global University. So, ma'am also serves as an assistant editor for Jindal Global Law Review, a thematic interdisciplinary law journal that is indexed in Scopus. Also, she is working as a faculty coordinator for two university-wide societies, that is Girl Up JGU and RAQS, the Dance Society. Before joining Jindal Global University, ma'am has a working experience with an international human rights law firm, Persis Strategies LLC, that is in Washington, USA. So it was engaging in lobbying for release of political prisoners in several countries. So ma'am has contributed towards the drafting of a comprehensive report, The Kremlin Political Prisoners, Advancing a Political Agenda by Crushing Dissent. That was written by Persis Strategies and it was co-commissioned by Free Russia Foundation, the Human Rights Foundation, the Lantos Foundation for Human Rights and Justice, the Raoul Wallenberg Center for Human Rights. Ma'am also conducted an analysis for the of the Myanmar laws against human trafficking and prostitution to recommend changes based on their conformity with CEDAW. Ma'am has conducted international law research on countries like Russia, Egypt, Kazakhstan, Iran, etc. Also, she was a member in research on issues pertaining to corporate interference with access to water by sale of public water resources to private parties for supply purposes and setting up bottling plants in the US. Ma'am has also worked on the right to water of indigenous persons in India and matters of corporate social responsibility. So, on behalf of PS Modern Law College, I heartily welcome you, ma'am. So, we are eagerly waiting to listen to you, ma'am. Over to you.
Thank you very much. I think the first question I would like to ask is, what is
Yes,
the general, which year the students are from?
This is basically focused कि LLM students यहाँ पर ज़्यादा join होने चाहिए because it is a research methodology subject which is we are focusing on lecture series. So we are expecting कि यहाँ पर वो ज़्यादा हो. YouTube link भी दिया है. So it's like that. So around 58 students are there.
Okay. So first of all, this is a great opportunity. Thank you very much. Because coming back to modern to do this is also even better for me because
I would like to interrupt you and tell you all the participants that she is a inspiration, true inspiration for our college because she is an alumni from our college. Okay? And she had a very great this thing. Her उनका ये जो था पूरा journey 5 years का. I have seen her. So welcome you, ma'am, again. You can start with all yours.
So with these heartwarming wishes, I would like to start. So the topic of my presentation today is research methodology, expectation versus reality. Now, considering that you're all LLMs, most of you must be LLM students and it's on YouTube, this might seem like a very informal lecture or a very informal way of telling you about research methodologies, where I am not actually telling you about what is quantitative research, qualitative research, or what is empirical research, doctrinal research. I am not talking about those things. I am talking about what happens in real life when you are conducting all of these ways of research. Because I believe in the previous lecture, you must have learned about what is research methodology, what it means to conduct research, what are the different methods. Next lecture, you probably will learn about different other things related to research. Why I decided to talk about reality versus expectation is because when I was in law school, I realized that my exposure to research work was very limited, right? Our teachers and our professors attempt to introduce us to different kinds of research material, different kinds of books and textbooks. But the nature of law school is such that it is so much work, it is so much studying, so much literature all the time, that we don't end up reading a lot. We don't end up having access to a lot of research format, research material, right? And then when you go on to the LLM program, you realize that, okay, no, this is a very different ball game. So what I'm going to do today is I'm just going to give you a few pointers in a very informal manner to tell you what goes about or what is expected to go about in when you conduct research, and how you can effectively research, right? Because anytime, even in your law school or your LLM, when you are conducting research, if it is not effective, then it is not useful, right? You may not be able to create an impact or produce any effective result or produce any visible, tangible result if you don't conduct your research a certain way and you don't present it a certain way, right? So honestly, when I started preparing, I have a presentation, and honestly, when I started preparing the presentation, I thought this was going to be lower year, so one, like the second, third year type of students. But to be very honest, even if I looked at this presentation at any stage of my career, I think I would appreciate, because it is, I'm just appreciating my own work, but it is just an outline of, so whether you are doing empirical research, doctrinal research, qualitative, quantitative, statistical, theoretical, it doesn't matter. This process is going to help you apply your methodology in any of these methods of research, right? This is research methodology from point A to point B, what I am going to show you. All right. So I'm just quickly going to share my screen.
You can share, ma'am.
Yes. Yeah. So I have shared my screen and I've put this on. So research methodology, expectation versus reality. Why expectation versus reality is we essentially expect research to go a certain way, that we're just going to start looking for stuff and we are going to find it. It doesn't end up being like that ever, to be very honest. So what is research methodology is the first question that comes up. But again, let me remind you, when I ask you these, I have a few questions right here. When I ask you these questions, I am not talking about very specifically qualitative, quantitative, empirical, doctrinal, or statistical, or survey based, or not survey based, or online based, or theoretical based, or like book based, or whatever. I am not telling you what method you are using. I am telling you what overall structure of your research is supposed to be like. Okay, and what helps you make that research methodology of quantitative, qualitative effective, right? So do you think research is important? If anyone wants to respond, please feel free to. But I think research is important, especially in a law school, and especially in the field of law where everything is evolving at every second, you need research, right? You need to be well versed with what is happening. And the best way to do is conduct research. What is research? Finding out what is already there, right? Essentially discovering new information in very layman terms. Why do you think is important? I just told you why. Can you survive law school without research skills? Absolutely not. And if you have, then kudos to you. But let me tell you, even if you say that you have survived law school without research skills, you probably haven't, because you've conducted some sort of research. Say, for example, to write a particular answer or to write a particular paper or moot memorial or something, you have looked at certain material, you have picked that material up, applied it to the question that you are answering, and written about it. That essentially is what research is about, right? So you have research skills. It just, what I'm going to tell you today is going to be just a little bit of a process of honing those research skills, right? It is not some sort of mysterious thing. It is not some elusive action that you need to conduct. It is something that is absolutely relevant and important, and it is supposed to be conducted by each and every student, regardless of their field, but for a law school, absolutely important. Do you think you can conduct effective research? When you ask this question to yourself, right, that do you think you can conduct effective research, is where all of the other questions come in. Is that, what is my methodology? Whether I am identifying the quality of the content, or whether I am analyzing the number of people. So for example, if you're conducting a survey, then you will say, for example, say that X number of people are having this opinion about something, and that is why my research results in saying that, okay, X is equal to Y or something, right? So whether you can conduct effective research, is it producing results that are readable, that are applicable? That is what effective research looks like. Is legal research different from any other kinds of research? Yes and no. Yes, because you have very relevant primary sources like the acts, the laws, the gazettes, the ministry newsletters, among other, constitution, blah, 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 right? And there are secondary resources, which are basically journals and this and that talk about the primary resources, right? The best way to go about effectively researching is to look at the secondary resources first, and then go around, identify what primary resources are in the secondary resources, what are the secondary resources talking about, and then go into the primary resources. That's generally the way you should do it. How is it different? Is because it has those primary and secondary very clear-cut resources, and also not that other fields don't, but here the legal research requires you to have aptitudes in very different areas. Like, for example, you can't have legal research strictly in law. You will apply sociological aspects to it. You can apply gendered aspects to it. You can apply statistical analysis to it. You can apply different kinds of frameworks to your research. And that's why legal research ends up being a little different from other kinds of research, right? Because every kind of research has a primary resource, a secondary resource, a structure for their research, etc., right? Hence that was the difference. Does having research skills make a law student's life easier? I think, having developed my research skills a little bit during law school and post that, I think had I known most of what I know now during my law school or my LLM, my life 100% would have been easier. So yes, it makes it easier, and hence please do not ever give up on an opportunity to learn about research methodologies, because it's going to help you no matter what. Even in the courtroom, if you're practicing, research is important. If you are going into some academic space like mine, research though is absolutely important. If you are going to go research for an NGO or something like that, obviously important, right? So yes, really, it makes a student's life easier. Students, nice, if not student only, practitioners' life easier. So expectations versus reality. Research appears to be this very simple thing like, okay, I will look for this material. I will find it right there in one or two resources, and I will go from point A to point B. I will research and I will write about it. But no, it doesn't work like that. The reality is a little more complicated. And that is why I am going to give you the tools today to understand or to achieve this point A to point B transition of starting your research, figuring out what you want to research about, and then moving to the ultimate presentation of your research, right? I'm going to give you the tools to how make that journey easy so that you can apply the formal methods of research methodology, research to your work, right? So for example, if I'm whatever tools I give you today, in that setting, you can apply quantitative research, you can apply quality, you can apply stats, and I'm going to repeat these words again and again. So please bear with me. So steps to researching in absence of formal training, right? So the formal training would involve teaching you about what it means to quantitatively research, what it means to have empirical research data, what it means to have doctrinal research data, what it means to have theoretical training, research, what it means to have practical research, what it means to have experimental research. These are different kinds of methodologies which I just named, right? Now, in the absence of that knowledge, how you will conduct your research, and these are the steps. In this method, within these steps, you can then find out what method you have applied, right? So for example, when you are doing your research, if you are primarily looking at only materials that are online and that are secondary materials written by authors writing about law. So that means you are doing theoretical research, right? If you are conducting a survey, you are going out into the community and asking them to write a survey, answer a survey, and then you are writing down those results, and then you are analyzing them by percentage, and then you are applying some sort of law or some sort of existing framework to it and saying, okay, according to this framework, this amount of population or this percentage of population does not have access to water, for that matter, right? Then that is a quantitative research analysis. That is what you are doing. So all of this you will be able to identify. What I am going to show you today is the steps to research in absence of formal training, where you don't know what kind of research you're trying to do, or if you had no idea there are different types of research methodologies, what steps you can follow to have a clear-cut research material, right? So we're going to go through these steps one by one. So this is something that is very, very obvious, that what my friends think I do, what my mom thinks I do, what my boss thinks I do, what I think I do, it looks so formal and nice, and what I actually do. Whenever I sit down to write or whenever I sit down to research, most of my time is spent just looking at my laptop, reading the same thing 3 times to understand what is going on, right? And that ends up being most of what research looks like. A lot of research is just, and if I were to tell you in an informal manner, a lot of research methodology is just Googling secondary resources and downloading them and saving them to read later. But that's not how you will go ahead in your research. And so at one point you have to stop. And at one point you have to actually pay attention and learn and understand what's going on. So step 1, identifying the aims and objectives. Identify what you want to achieve when you engage in the process of research, right? And I have a lot of memes on here. I teach a range of students, first years to fifth years. And so they identify a lot with memes. I hope you do too. Everyone uses Instagram. But if you don't, there is also text on the screen. So you can remember that, if not the meme. Okay, so identify what you want to achieve when you engage in the process of research. So when basically, like I said, right, if you are going into a community, you have a particular aim in mind, right? That I want to identify whether this village or this community or this city has access to water, easy access to water, right? Access to water can mean different things. Easy access to water. Then when you say easy, you will define that within 1 kilometer of their living residence, or at home through their taps, right? Or in a community space, common area outside of the particular society, right? That is something that you will identify. So what you want to achieve, what you want to study, is something that you have to identify. Your aim and your objective when you are starting your research. For example, if you're writing a moot court, or if you're writing as an LLM student, probably you would write about a thesis, right? So first is they ask you, what's your thesis statement? What's your hypothesis, right? That I'm not asking you to write your hypothesis on the first step of your research. What I'm asking you is identify what you want to do with that hypothesis. Why do you have that hypothesis in the first place? Why are you trying to approach a certain thing a certain way, right? When you identify the aim, so for example, when I started researching for my law firm, they said, write a background on a particular country, right? Because we were trying to do a background paper on it, on that particular country. So what I did was I identified the aim that it is writing a background on a particular country. Number two, that writing a background is so vague, right? So because I was working for release, lobbying for release of political prisoners, or when I was writing about right to water, I identified or I narrowed it to say background on the state's treatment of political prisoners or laws related to political prisoners, right? You narrow it down. That identifies what you want to achieve when you are looking for information, right? This helps in identifying a starting point and an ending point, so that you don't spend so much time on research that you just have too much material and you can't write anymore, right? It also helps to figure out the channels of research, right? Now that I have narrowed it down to the laws related to political prisoners, or in the case of water, if I have narrowed it down to laws related to water, right, or water access or right to water, that means then I'm going to look at primary resources, and then I'm going to look at statistical data. That's the only information that I will look at, right? Because I have an aim in mind now. I have a way to, like, for example, it's essentially putting your destination in GPS, right? You put your destination and it shows you 3 different ways, the easiest way you choose, right? Easiest nahi, your preferred way you will choose. Preliminary research. So the second step is conducting preliminary research, right? Yes, you can Google in your preliminary research. No matter what quantitative, qualitative, experimental, whatever research you're doing, empirical, doctrinal, it doesn't matter. You can Google things. However, it cannot be your only source to gather information, right? Remember that it is only to gather primary information. The first few results can give you a general idea of what is part of all of your topic, right? So for example, right to water will have right to clean water, right to easy access to water, access through access to bottled water, access to treated water, access to treatment plants, access to clean waters for washing and cleaning purposes, not just drinking purposes, right? The cost of water tax, it's going to have so much, right? So once you have that aim in your mind, you can start your preliminary research. Say, for example, you put in the Google search saying right to water and taxes, right? You put that, and then you figure out what all is part of your topic. It helps you understand what would be the purview of your particular research project, right? For example, if your question is about right to water and water taxes, you are not going to write about right to water and right to water for farmers, right? You're going to, I mean, you can still narrow it down to farmers, of course you can, but your focus point is taxes. You can add farmers to this analysis, but your focal point is taxes for farmers. It's not taxes, it's not farmers and then second point taxes. First is taxes, right? So then purview of your particular research project. Today you are writing a moot court about right to water, or a research paper or a thesis about right to water. Your purview of the research, the box inside which your research sits and fits, that is something that you can identify through this preliminary research, right? Oh, meanwhile, if you have like any questions in the middle of all of this, please let me know. Okay. Identifying legitimate resources. As stated before, Google cannot form the basis of your research, right? Neither can India Kanun or Wiki or any other source that is not a primary source or a secondary source from legitimate journals or books, right? Blog posts are also not included in legitimate sources unless they are peer reviewed or are from reputed newspapers or universities, right? You are not going to use information that is given by non-authorized people. .gov websites, good sources. Journal websites, good sources. Journals, great sources. Books, good sources. Wiki page, no. India Kanun, no. Download a judgment from Manupatra or AIR or whichever source, Lexis or whichever source you're using, internet source you're using. Download that, great. SCI website, great, right? Actual websites of the courts, good source. If you want data, statistical data, NGOs and other human rights, civil society workers, or if not talking about human rights corporate, then you can talk about teachers and PhD thesis of other people. All of these are legitimate sources, right? And that is why the meme, it makes sense, because most of the times it so happens that when you Google something or when you try to preliminary search something, you find information that is very superficial. You find just primary information and you end up using that, right? Don't do that. You search for a reliable source for your research, not in a very superficial manner. You have to dig deep. You have to go beyond Wiki. Even if you are reading the Wiki page for primary information, remember that the Wiki page has citations. Those citations, where you go to those links, find out if that is correct, and then use that link and not Wiki for your research, right? So identify your legitimate resources. Making a research document. Now, this is a part of research methodology. Any research methodology that you have, anyone, you can use this method, right? Make a research document. And I learned this from a colleague of mine. So you can definitely have this method. It's a very commonly applied method where basically it's a thing of preference, to be very honest, but it helps you organize your research in one document so that you are not lost. Okay, I read this somewhere, now I don't remember where it is from, right? Then you can have all of this in one place, and it helps with your research methodology as well. Say, for example, if you're doing doctrinal research, then you are looking for, if you are, you're all law students, you know the basic structure doctrine, right? If you are doing research based on that basic structure, then you will have a topic heading saying basic structure, right? And then you will find out relevant things based on basic structure. So it is always good to have a research document where you have the title of the source, say MP Singh basic structure commentary, right? That's your title, the date of its publishing, the source, if you got it from a journal, if you got it from a website, if you got it from a blog post, wherever, Blog post should not be your primary source. It should not appear in your citations. But if you are utilizing it for analysis, for understanding, then you can put it there. You can put your source name, for example, whatever journal name, whatever it was, link if applicable, and date of access, right? So that this is going to give you credibility. If you are, say, conducting survey-based information, right, survey-based methodology, then you are going to send out a questionnaire to people and they are going to respond. Then in your research document, what are you going to do? You are going to figure out ways to, first of all, analyze this. You're going to apply certain amount of information that you have to a particular amount of data, right, which you have received. That data you collect in one document, what information, what framework you are using in that. So for example, like I said, if you're going to a community of to figure out their access for water, you are talking about access for water in your questionnaire. So your questionnaire will be that in that document. The results and the findings will be in that document. The statistical data will be in that document. And then you will also have the laws and the sociological aspect of whatever aspect you're applying to it. All of that will be in that document, right? And followed by excerpts from the source as per requirement. If you want to add excerpts also to the document, you can do it. This essentially helps you figure everything in one place and in a very organized manner. Source 1, source 2, source 3, right? And it shows you how much you have, so that after a point you can stop researching because at this, in this age, we have everything at the tip of our fingers, right? We have, if it's just a matter of Googling it or sending a request for a paper from your college saying, ma'am, I want to read this paper, can you access it for me, right? That's the only requirement that you have, and then you can have access to hundreds and thousands of papers and information, which is not good for your work, right? You are going to be drowned in information without actually producing research, right? And hence it's important to have this kind of a document, some sort. And my colleague very generously taught me this method, and so I think it is important to learn this method when you are researching. And any kind of research, formal research methodology is going to be, can utilize this research document, right? Figuring out the framework and your argument. So when you have figured out your primary research, right, then you are going to look at your framework. So what is framework? It is basically something we automatically apply, we assume, and we apply unconsciously, right? It is described as the abstract logical structure of meaning that guide the development of the study. All frameworks are based on the identification of key concepts and relationships among those concepts. All LLM students, if you're LLM students, you must remember that whatever thesis you're writing or whatever papers you're writing at the end of the courses, all of them will require a framework, right? It has to have a theoretical framework or a practical framework or a gendered framework or a agricultural laws framework if you're talking about farmers, or some sort of a framework to identify very relevant issues. You can't just have discuss everything, right, in a topic. Like for example, when I was talking, let's continue the example of right to water, right? If I'm just saying right to water, it can cover so many things. It can cover law, it can cover sociology, politics, economics, everything it can cover, right? If I add the framework of right to water for indigenous people, so the framework, the theoretical framework is in the laws related to indigenous persons, right? That framework, that is going to give my study a logical structure and a guide, right? Then if I have a guide, then I am going to just look for laws or access to water related information for indigenous persons, right? I am not going to look for right of access to other people, because my research is for indigenous persons. Then I'm going to talk about indigenous persons. And then I'm going to identify the key concepts and relationships among them. How what right to water interacts with the rights of indigenous persons, which are not essentially right to water type of right. There are other rights also, but how are those rights related to right to water? How is that right? How can that right be guaranteed under Article 21? Does Article 21 apply to indigenous persons? Does it not? How does it apply? 21 applies to everyone, but just an example, right? So for research, for conducting a research and to effectively research, we must apply it consciously and make choices with respect to it, right? Remember, again, what I'm giving you today are tools to identify and to use the research methodologies that you may have learned yesterday or will learn tomorrow, right? Today, I am just giving you the tools to utilize all of that information that you gather in those manners. This is also a form of research methodology. What this figuring out a framework and an argument is it helps in narrowing and focusing your research on relevant topics. Like I said, if I want to research on indigenous persons, I am not going to Google other things, and then I'm not going to read books and papers and academic articles about other things. I'm going to talk about indigenous persons, and thus identifying the argument will finally streamline your research, right? Once you applied the framework, you have identified the argument that, okay, I want to make the argument that indigenous persons do not have they do not have successful application of their right to successful access of their right to water, right? That argument or that hypothesis, as you will finally streamline your research, right? Now, write it all down. I just told you to make a research document. This writing it all down is different from that research document. This is your words. This is what you understand from whatever you've studied so far, whatever you've identified so far, right? It is important to start writing, because unless you write, you will not get clarity and you will not understand where you have to go for further research. A very important step in research methodology is recording, right? Recording your findings. And if you are doing a quantitative, then though definitely recording is important. Empirical, doctrinal, you have to trace everything and you have to write it down. Writing is going to help you also to find out any gaps in your research. Say, for example, when I'm talking about, again, water rights for indigenous persons, if I'm talking about that, then if I am only talking about right to water in a very superficial manner and I start writing it down, I will realize that I have not conducted enough research to be able to write a research paper or a thesis, right? I have, or when I start writing it down, I will find out that, okay, this part of my argument that they don't have access to water, say for example, they don't have access to easy access to water, or they don't have access to their right to water because of certain things, right? Or because of, say, the Coca-Cola plants somewhere, right? That was one of the cases I researched upon before. If that is what I'm researching, and I find out that, okay, I don't have enough information about that particular case, what happened in that particular situation, then that writing down is going to help you to identify that gap. And then you go back to your research, you go back to studying more, and then you come back with more information, right? This is also a form of research methodology where you record and you revisit, right? You revisit your results and you figure out what happened, what is not, what is applicable and what isn't. Use claim, evidence and argument format, right? So what this is going to do when you are writing it all down, don't just haphazardly start writing. Of course, start writing as you wish to, but try to stick to the claim, evidence and argument format, because claim is an opinion. Oh, sorry. Claim is an opinion. Claim is an opinion or an argument, Evidence is facts, quotes, and undisputed text. Very important, undisputed text. Analysis, your explanation of how the evidence supports the opinion or argument and substantiates your claim, right? Remember that all of this, whatever I've just told you, also can apply to practitioners, right? When we are practicing, we are making a claim for something. We are saying that this person caused me injury, right? That's my argument. That's my claim. I am going to provide you evidence. I'm going to provide the court with evidence, which are facts, which are undisputed facts, right? And quotes or testimonies or everything. And then I am going to make that correlation between my claim and evidence. For example, if I say that somebody has hurt me, I have a, right? So I am saying that somebody has hurt me here. And the evidence is that I have a cut on my hand, right? And then there is a testimony of my friend that they saw that this XYZ person gave me this cut in my hand, right? So I have fact, I have quotes and testimonies, and I have that person present there, the person who gave me the mark. My analysis or my presentation of the argument is basically making the correlation between that fact and the claim. So the fact is that I have a cut in my hand. The fact is that this person has there is a quote from another person that says that this XYZ person gave me this cut. And this XYZ person was present there. They had motive and they had the means to give me this mark. I have a gash in my hand. And hence, my argument is that this person gave me this mark, right? Simple in practicing terms. Having said that, once that is done, even for research papers, same thing. If I am claiming that the claim would be that indigenous persons don't have access to right to water because of the Coca-Cola plants, right? The evidence is that there is a Coca-Cola plant, that there is that they are utilizing all their water, that they are damaging the natural habitat of the indigenous persons, and that is why, and that is all happening, right? The analysis is that you, and of course the undisputed text and quote would be that you are applying a particular law. The analysis is that, say for example, Article 21 guarantees right to life, water comes under Article 21 hence, and it is right to habitat also, right to life with dignity also comes in. And so that is why applying all of these laws to the fact support my argument. Once you start writing like this, it's going to help you in clarity of presentation, clarity of writing, clarity of whether you have to conduct more research. It is going to support your research methodology by, if you are, say, conducting qualitative, quantitative, empirical, doctrinal, any kind of research method you are using, formal method of research you may be using, this is going to help you to understand whether you want to, whether you have to go further in that research, or you are done and now you have enough material to write a particular paper or a memorial or a brief, right? Discuss with your peers and your superiors. Understand that research is basically studying something with a focus in mind and working towards an outcome, right? Having said that, also remember that your teachers have had this experience and hence they can guide you. If you are writing a thesis, obviously your teacher has already written a thesis. Go talk to them. Your research methodology can include discussions. Of course, it's not a formal way of doing it, but it can include discussions. It can give you more ways of approaching your methodology that you are using, the formal methodology, right? They most probably have applied knowledge of the subject that you are researching. So pay attention. Same goes for your peers. Through experience, they may have insights, right? I had my classmates when I was in college. I had my classmates who were doing, say, for example, LLB, and I was a BSL student. So I was a 5-year student, and I had come fresh out of 12th grade. And there were a lot of LLB students who had done so much in their life and then come to study. They may have practical knowledge of the space, right? this should form part of your research, that you talk to them. If possible, if your teachers, and if you don't feel safe going to your peers, you can definitely reach out to your teachers. They have learned, they have specializations, and you can go talk to them, right? It all, and anyways, you write it down, and remember, take something written to them for you to be able to get some feedback, or, and obviously pay attention more in class, right? It's always helps to just have a third person review your research. So discussion with peers, identifying counter arguments, a very, very important method of research is, or rather very, very important feature of research is identifying counter arguments. You cannot present a comprehensive research without having an argument, that is, without having a, an identification of counter argument if they exist. For example, if I'm writing about background of a country, I'm not making an argument as such, but I am definitely going to say and identify that my sources are limited. I am not, say for example, the author has not visited the country to know the actual situation there, but has made these observations in the background that they are writing, has made these observations based on news reports and other non-governmental organization, civil society sources, right? Identifying your counter argument. When you write an academic essay, you make an argument, your thesis, and you support it. When you make an argument that is a counter argument, you consider a possible argument against your thesis or some aspect of your reasoning, right? It presents you as the kind of person who weighs alternatives before arguing for one. It makes your research more holistic and without gaps. Whenever you are conducting research, whatever methodology you are using, even if you are doing doctrinal research, you have to present the counter argument, the argument that may go against that doctrine, the efficacy of that doctrine. Or if you are doing quantitative research, you have to identify that there may be a counter argument that my sample set is too small, or the sample set has a flaw that they were all very from a limited social background. Any counter argument that may possibly go against your thesis or an aspect of your thesis, that is something that you need to identify, and that is something that you need to research, right? You can make your own argument solid if you have already identified the issues with it, and just making your research, or thus making your research also solid, right? Finally, make citation a practice. One of the most biggest and most important things in research and writing is citation. Your research methodology also defines your citation, right? If you have, for example, if you're doing a survey based writing, then you are not going to be able to say Professor Aishwarya said, and you're conducting a survey with Aishwarya and Manisha ma'am or Bibwe ma'am or someone else, right? Then you're not going to be able to say Bibwe ma'am said this in one lecture. That's not going to be your source, right? However, you are going to be able to say, if you're doing a quantitative research, the kind of citation would be that subject X in this study, upon asking that question, answered this. Okay? The point is, do not attribute, do not misattribute, and do not forget to attribute. When you are citing something, now this I said about quantitative research. For example, you're doing doctrinal research about basic structure doctrine, and you're talking about things that different authors have said. If you don't cite, your research doesn't get credibility, because someone is going to find out you copied it, and then your entire research falls apart. Regardless of how amazing it was, how thorough it was, just because you did not cite something, it's going to fall apart and it's not going to be taken seriously, right? So it helps you keep your study clean. Nobody can doubt your research and your theories if you have citation, right? Hence, your methodology is also going to decide your requirement of citation, right? Methods of citation, there are different kinds of formal methods of citation, like those Blue Book and Oscola and Chicago and MLA and this and that. Those are formats of citation. Requirement of citation is a different thing. I will tell you, when in doubt, cite. Even when paraphrased, you have to, if you are conducting research, you have to attribute wherever you've received that information from. As long as it is someone else's information, you are going to cite it. And this becomes a very, very important part in research methodology as well. Your research methodology is going to have a lot of credibility based on the sources that you cite, right? Hence, make citation a practice. Presentation is important. Do not do your presentations in meme format. While new and innovative methods of writing and presentation are evolving, it is important to first stick to the basics. Your research might end up being worthless if you are not able to present it in the best format. And that is why identifying the methodology is important in the first place, right? You may conduct research based on the steps that I just told you and present it in a certain way, because the expectation may be that, oh, you'll do formal, qualitative or doctrinal or everything, but how to do it is what I'm giving you, right? Qualitative analysis or quantitative or empirical data, what that means is something that a lot of people are going to teach you. But a lot of people or a lot of research methodology classes are not going to give you these tools, right? This is important, that how do you get to the point of identifying your research methodology? This, right? And presentation is important. Do not forget about that. And the last thing that I want all of you to remember is that there are formal methods of conducting research, right? Like I've been repeatedly saying, qualitative, quantitative, empirical, doctrine, experimental, survey-based, whatever. There are formal methods of conducting research. Those are formal methodologies which have a proper procedure, which have a proper protocol, and they have formal names and techniques that you have to follow. You can study them, and different methods are applied to different kinds of studies, and you have to identify which applies to which one. You can't do just a doctrinal research and end up on a result saying indigenous people don't have access to water. That has to be a survey based thing, or an call it quantitative analysis, right? It can't be just a theoretical analysis saying they don't have access. This presentation particularly was mainly for writing and researching during your law school and a little bit after that, right? When you start conducting further research, you will have to, for sure, explore more formal methods. When you are writing your thesis in your law schools and your LLM, you are going to have to identify a literature review, and then you're going to have to write a methodology that you're going to follow to come to the conclusion of your hypothesis, right? Hence, never give up a chance to learn about new methods of research, and do not be afraid to learn and then devise your own methods. A very important thing to remember is, if you can't fit your research in these formal techniques and methods, you can actually devise your own method. And that is fine as long as you stick to these tools and you make it a credible method, right? And it is relevant to what you're researching. So that's me, and that's the end of my presentation. I'm going to stop sharing now. If you have any questions, concerns, doubts, please.
Yes, that is what I'm saying. With your permission, ma'am, we can go ahead with the question answer session. So anybody from the participants who would like to ask anything to ma'am, they can go ahead. Yes, Shahin Shinde. Yes, ma'am. You can unmute yourself and you can switch on your video also.
Hello.
Hello.
Good afternoon, ma'am. And first of all, I would like to thank you for the very descriptive lecture, and it really is going to help. But I feel that if this information we would have received little bit earlier, then it would have been more better, because right now we are about to, submit our dissertation also. But still, it's going to be a lot of help. Okay, my question was regarding the citations. As you said that you have to support whatever you're saying with the help of citations. So by saying that, do you mean that when generally into practice, when we cite some cases in the court also to support whatever I'm saying or my contentions are, so in the same way you have to put the citations in the research or as well? Okay,
Yes.
so supposing a citation is saying that Supreme Court in so and so case X versus Y said this was ruling, that kind of citation you mean to say?
Yes, that would be preferable. And if you are,
Okay,
say for example, you are talking about some other legal paper, right? Research paper that you are citing. So you don't necessarily need to say that in this research paper they have said this. You can just
okay,
put quotes around whatever you are trying to say from that paper. If you've picked it up from there, you can put quotes around it and you put it in the reference. Footnote banaya hai ya whatever you have in the in text or whichever
uh-huh.
format you follow. The point is
Okay,
to necessarily let the reader know that the author has picked it up from somewhere else and it's not their original property.
oh, okay, okay, yeah, got it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes. Anyone else?
And if there are no questions, I would just like to say that if anyone wants to ever reach out to talk about research or methodologies and informal settings as well, Manisha ma'am has my number and she
Sure, sure.
email, preferably email, because number is sometimes I'm not reachable, I'm not available. So an email would be better. She
Yeah,
has my email, she
definitely.
can share it.
I will do that, ma'am. I will do that. Whoever is in need of
Ma'am,
that. Yes.
ma'am, if you could please share the email ID right away, then we can take it down.
Oh, I should share it right now on the chat or something?
Yeah, I think she wants that.
Oh, okay, I
Okay.
can do that.
Yeah.
This is
Yes.
my personal email ID because the work email is just swamped and there's too many emails over there already. So please reach out to me and I please, if you are reaching out to me, just identify yourself that you're from MLC or something, then I will pay more attention to that email.
Yes. Anyone? Anybody else who would like to ask anything to ma'am?
Thank you, thank
Thank you.
Okay. So now I would like to thank Aishwarya Pagidar madam for coming here and giving such a beautiful and informative, and that too it was not a formal lecture as such, but you gave all the tips that students, those who want to go ahead with the research article, yeah, research paper, yeah, so dissertation hai, everything you have covered, how exactly they have to go ahead with such kind of activities. So you are trying to fit that method of your own in
Yeah.
research methodology
It's
using
pretty
your
much
methods.
my own devised method.
Exactly, exactly. And it was really, really fruitful for all of us, because even I was listening keenly what you were talking about, how to go ahead, how to question yourself. The first slide itself you started. So it was really, really informative session. And the examples which you have cited and the process through which you have gone, actually you have put in your that journey with us. You shared that journey with us. So I really thank you so much, ma'am. And I can call you again and again, as you also know
Please
how
do.
we are attached to
Please
the
do.
college.
I
Okay.
love modern law college and I would do
Exactly,
anything
ma'am.
for it.
And just because of that, she has given immediately this email ID to each and every one of the students, those who want to approach her personally as well for going ahead with the research activities. So thank you so much, ma'am. Thanks for your wonderful session. So next time also we can call you for such kind of activities.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Yeah, here I would like to conclude the second day of our lecture series, and thank you all the participants. Tomorrow we'll be having our last day, third day, where we are going to have Associate Professor Rahul Bibwe sir. He is going to talk about more of the e-resources. So please join tomorrow at 12 p.m. sharp. Thank you so much.